you look at the stats, 100 metres from 8 carries in 20 minutes. He made more metres in those 20 minutes than a lot of those players made all game.
Than all the Wigan props made.
Yeah, and that's phenomenal. Plus, you add on to the experience of Chris Hill winning the cup with Warrington. It was a huge blow for Huddersfield and a massive boost for Wigan. On the point of the calling time off, it wasn't the only time in the game that Childs called time off when a Huddersfield player went down, but didn't call time off when a Wigan player went down.
It did feel, yeah, I agree. It felt that way from, I don't know if it's just our bias, but it felt that way, and that moment felt that way as well. It felt like he called time off as soon as we'd started making meters, but didn't call time off when he had an opportunity to the other time.
My impression as a neutral was that he wanted, in both occasions, he let play go on when players initially got injured. For me, it happened both ways. His instinct was to try to let things go. I think what happened was, with the Hill one, is that he made it inevitable that he had to stop the game because of his position.
Yeah.
So there's an element of gamesmanship there.
He got back up and then got back into the defensive line and went down. It's not the referee kind of had no choice. I agree.
Exactly. But I think Child was if a player got injured, I think he was wanting to play on generally. I think the thing with Hill was, I think he was probably not far from coming off at the end of his first stint anyway. The big difference for me was Chris Hill not being able to come on in the second half. He'd kind of had his impact, hadn't he? Because you kind of assume that it comes on, 5 minutes or 10 minutes into the second half, and tries to get another 100 meters in that time, don't you? So he'd kind of done he'd made his first half impact. They were going to be swapping him, I would imagine, probably pretty soon.
Yeah.
It was, as you said, it was his inability to come on and influence things positively in the second half that was the big problem.
Yeah. Then a McGilvery knock-on in an exit set was missed, but the Giants were pinged for offside on the next set. Wigan got the second attacking set 15 minutes or so after their first, so it had been all Huddersfield for 15 minutes, really. In that spell, but Huddersfield had only got 6-0. Probably they would be disappointed with that. Wigan do have a really good defensive set, force the Giants to kick from deep. Wigan start their next set on halfway, which was a big boost for Wigan. Young O'Neill out of hooker kicks for himself. He got run out of the play by Daniel Levi, which could have arguably been a penalty, but Wigan defenders forced Lola here in goal anyway. So good positioning by Lola here, but really good defensive push by the Wigan defenders. And that goal line dropout led to the Harry Smith try. So, David, why don't you talk us through the Harry Smith try? What did you make of that?
Yeah, as you said, we'd kind of been under the pump for quite some time, and it did feel like we'd been starved of any possession in any territory. And it was literally, it felt like the first time we'd got, apart from the opening sort of 5 minutes, it felt like the first time we got any real, possession near the red zone.
Yeah, it was the only time in the first half we really maintained any attacking territory.
Yeah, and I think even the try came, I think it was like midway through the tackle count, and Morgan Smithies makes a line run, takes on I think 2 defenders and gets his arm free and just passes just the most beautiful pass to Smith. And where I was sitting, it was sort of directly in line with Harry Smith's run, like looking down the pitch, he was sort of running away. And it was just as soon as Morgan Smithies got his arm free for that pass, you knew that Harry Smith was going to score. You knew he was going to outpace them. So yeah, the confidence kind of filled back up from that point with the try. It was just great halfback play, and I think with a lot of credit, again we'll probably speak about it a little bit later, but there's got to be a lot of credit for Lee Breers and Harry Smith's improvements this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just getting on his shoulder. We've seen Mago do it. Not necessarily seen that much from a lot of the other forwards in terms of the close offloads when they've got men around them. But, it showed great strength from Morgan Smithies, who we forget is still a young lad at the end of the day, and great awareness. But Harry Smith to be on his shoulder and in that space and, 10, 15 metres out, and he just flew to the line and scored. And obviously he nailed the conversion to make it 6-6, and it was, game on, back to square one with just less time remaining. So it felt, the confidence lifted definitely amongst the fans at that point as well.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe then cancelled out by Wigan's errors coming back to haunt They didn't want to do it easily in this game. Poor long pass out of dummy half. Cade Cuss couldn't take it in, knocked on, scrum 20 metres out, and Huddersfield are back on the attack. Jerry McGilvery goes really close. Jack Cogger goes pretty close, but Wigan's defence held out. However, I think that was the Giants' turn to put a good bit of defensive pressure on Wigan's exit set, just like that led up to the Smith try for Wigan. This all built some good defensive set from the Giants, built to the McQueen try. I don't know why. I don't know if this try is what won him the Lance Todd when it should have been Harry Smith's, but the Chris McQueen try, pretty nice play again. Good interplay between the second rower and the centre again, but this time the centre ran the dummy line for the second rower to go in behind it. And McQueen basically found himself in too much space. Wigan had lost numbers somewhere, but it was clever play, wasn't it, from Cogger, who dummied that grubber that they score from all the fucking time, and Lola here, who put in a really good pass into McQueen, Alan.
Yeah, the Lola here pass was very, very good. Yeah, as you say, McQueen tends to get on the end of kicks, but yeah, it's smart, counterintuitive play, isn't it? Picking up the there's no doubt that they were practicing the kind of kicks in behind this week. Or last week I wouldn't have expected. So yeah, to actually to do something slightly different was a well-deserved try, definitely. Yeah,
and it was well worked, really well worked. But the Giants kind of had the ascendancy for the rest of the first half, but Cade Cuss tried an interesting kick from his own 30, which went just in behind, just out of the reach of Liam Marshall again. It was almost like it was meant to be that the try that won it was one he just grabbed after a few that were just ahead of him. There was the one from Smith's kick just before that McGilvery covered well, and then there's this one on the halfway line, or inside Wigan's own half. What that meant is Wigan could have been under pressure for the final set of the half, but actually Wigan's defence was really good, despite giving up a 6 again, the first of the game. And Bevan French, the first time he had his first jinking run, 20 metres or so, nearly made a break. Then the referee was about to give a 6 again with 5 seconds left on the clock, then, or maybe 10 seconds left on the clock. Then they stayed on top of him for another 5 seconds. He changed it to a penalty, and they still didn't get off him to let them kick the penalty quickly. Yeah. And then the hooter blew. Wigan had one more play, but they couldn't do anything with it. It went into half-time at 10-6, but arguably, should it have gone into half-time with Wigan having a one-man advantage for that clear professional foul at the end of the half, or do we just write those off because they never actually pull players up for that, unfortunately? Alan, I'll go to you on that.
I think it's the kind of
loaded question with my view kind of in there, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, just a tad.
Well, there's only one fucking yellow card people are talking about, not this one, so
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you see in the last 5. There's all kinds of shit that goes on in the last 5-10 seconds of halves, isn't there? With slow play of the balls and all sorts. It was kind of. To me, it kind of feels it's a little bit like fair game, isn't it? It's this thing about, yes, we know he's going to lie on. Yes, he's going to give a 6 again. Yes, this is going to happen. Or if you're in possession, you're going to feign an ankle injury and then get up slowly. It's just what happens. So yeah. It's not. I'm not saying it's right, but it's one of those things that happens. You can see it in every game. It's like
everyone hates people holding the ball in the back of the scrum. Well, isn't this the same thing, but actually against the rules?
Well, yeah, but everyone hates it, but everyone does it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So,
no, I agree. Yeah, if it was the other way around, Wigan would have done it, I'm sure.
Oh, of course you would, because every team does it. So it doesn't make it right, but for me it wasn't. I think a card would have been very harsh at that stage, I would say.
Yeah, even though it was a professional foul. David, how did you feel then? Half-time, 10-6, Wigan down. Were you nervous now?
No, still not nervous at that point, because I knew that we'd made a lot of errors that invited the pressure on. I think from my perspective, it would have been harsh to give a yellow card for that, but ultimately in the letter of the law, and these people that are calling for yellow cards for head-high shots, etc., in the scheme of the way things have gone, that was a yellow card. It was a professional foul. He was holding Bevan French down to prevent a quick play of the ball and Wigan getting a last crack at the line on half-time. So, it would have been harsh, but if we're going to start saying everything needs to be played by, it's like earlier on in the season when they were giving cards willy-nilly and people getting sent off in sin bin, everybody's going, oh no, the refs are giving too many cards out, the game's gone soft, they're ruining the game. And then at the weekend, it was like, well, why Morgan Smith is not got a yellow card?
Well,
so
isn't this exactly the same thing? You know, remember the Saints fans crying their eyes out about Jack Wellsby getting a sin bin in for delaying a quick restart by kicking the ball into the stands? To me, this is exactly the same as that.
It is. But yeah, it's by the by, it's gone now. For what it's worth, in my opinion of Child, I think I've been a harsh critic of James Child in the past. I don't think he's endeared himself with many fans, and I don't think he's biased. I just think sometimes he makes the wrong decision. But I thought that for once, he played the game at the weekend with a little modicum of common sense. And as you were saying about as Alan was saying about the plays that were going down and him letting the play roll on until he absolutely had to stop the game, I think he played with a bit of common sense and tried to let things go to keep it a spectacle for as long as possible. And I think that was the case with the lack of sin bins in the game on both sides. But yeah, I wasn't nervous. I just thought we're not going to play that badly again in the second half. If I was a Huddersfield fan, yes, you'd be delighted to be going in the break in front. But, dare I say it, against a more clinical team, Wigan would have been a lot further behind in that game. Huddersfield played the percentages, they played the last tackle power plays, like you said, with Latelli at the end of most of them, just to make sure that French and Field didn't get any open play and open space. So I think Huddersfield probably disappointed to be only 4 points in front at that point.
I agree. So I was a little worried at this stage because for the third game in a row, Wigan had been really poor in the first half, but still were in the game. And the last two we'd lost, so I was worried that would happen for a third week in a row.
To be fair, though, we were a little bit further behind at Hull, weren't we? I think at a few points in the Hull game, we were a couple of scores behind. This one, nobody was ever more than a score behind, so you're always in with a shout, I think, particularly in the final.
Yeah.
To be fair, there was a Huddersfield fan sat behind me, and at half-time he said, we've been much better, but we haven't scored enough. And he was absolutely cock on. He figured that they hadn't reflected their dominance on the score sheet. Definitely.
Well, Wigan had gifted them most of their field position, and they really should have taken more advantage of the field position sooner than they did each time they scored. But most of their field position was largely off the back of Wigan errors. There were some good runs out of yardage by them. There were a couple of really good defensive sets where they restricted Wigan, but a lot of it had been done by Wigan's errors, and in a way, that even more makes Huddersfield should have capitalised than they did, because they didn't have to use up a lot of energy necessarily to get into those positions, because they were unforced errors, most of the errors as well. I'm not saying there weren't some forced errors as well, don't get me wrong, Huddersfield were good, but there was a lot of unforced errors from Wigan in their own 20 metres, which so I think we're all of the same conclusion at half-time. Huddersfield were on top, but Wigan were definitely not out of it, and Huddersfield probably had invited Wigan to have a second half like what panned out. So the start of the second half, Wigan kicked off to Huddersfield. There was a 6 again, given 2 or 3 tackles into the first set, but Wigan still did a really good job of restricting the kick to being around the halfway line, despite it being 8 or so tackles that they faced, which actually helped set things up. Wigan have an attacking set. They get to tackle, a set with the ball. They're in their own half. They get to tackle 4, and this might have been Breers at half-time having a word with young Harry, David, because Smith picks a pass perfectly to Thornley, missing out Jay Field, who 2 Huddersfield defenders had cracked in on. Thornley was composed, was able to put French into the open, 60 metres out. You knew that French would get round the back of the rest of the defenders, and then Jay Field was there in support for the past 10 metres out for a great finish, another long range Wigan try. Harry Smith converted. How were you feeling at that point, 12-10?
At that point, then the confidence was really lifted. I mean, it was funny because you look at the try and you look at the break, and there's a lot of things that you can do in rugby league in terms of coaching and ability, but one thing you can't coach is pace. And as soon as French got round, I didn't see Field supporting him at the first point. I really didn't, because I think there was 4 Huddersfield defenders plus Olahere at fullback covering that break, but they just could not keep pace with Field and French. It was literally 5 against 2, yet they still managed to get on top. And